request? I'm Lou Marcoscia. I'm the university's Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, and I'd like to welcome you to today's open forum, and thank you for being here with us. Today we're going to have a presentation by Sasaki Associates. Sasaki is an internationally known architectural firm which has expertise in architectural planning and design. We're very fortunate to have them. I think you'll find through the presentation how delightful they are to deal with and how extensive the scope of this undertaking is for them. So today what we'd like to discuss is the MyCampus survey, which I'm sure a number of you completed. We will go through that survey, which is a kickoff component of the Campus Master Plan. The Campus Master Plan is an undertaking that will occur for approximately another 9 or so months. It will take us through next May. At that time, there'll be a report that will be provided to the university's trustees. What I'd like to do now is introduce Maggie Dolan. Maggie is the project manager from Sasaki Associates, and she'll walk through the MyCampus survey initial findings. After that, we'll open it up for questions. Please feel free to ask any question you would like, and we'll see how the rest of the day goes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. So as Lou said, I'm here from Sasaki, so is my colleague Ricardo in the front row. So we're really excited to share the results of the MyCampus survey with you all. How many people were able to take the survey? It was out a couple weeks ago. Great, so a good number. So yeah, I look forward to sharing the results. As Lou said, this is the very beginning of the master planning process. We were on campus 3 weeks ago for initial stakeholder interviews and are back now to do building walkthroughs, talk with more people, but we're definitely just starting off and we're in this intense information gathering phase. So everything that you see here will be us sort of trying to figure out what are the questions that the plan really needs to pursue. And so you'll see a lot of your own responses, your own comments. So we'll be interested to hear if we're getting it right, if we're pulling out the right kinds of things that are really important issues, or if there are other things that we should consider. In terms of response, we had over 3,000 responses, which was really great. Syracuse is #2 of all time Sasaki MyCampus respondents. Beat Georgetown, beat Brown, so well done there. And staff, kind of surprisingly, led the way for most of the time. So thank you all staff for your strong participation, and students came up at the very end when the survey was extended over the weekend to come in at 45%, so almost half of the respondents. And then faculty are the remaining 16% of respondents. In terms of class year, a pretty even distribution among students, freshmen through graduate students, about 200 to 300 apiece. This is a distribution by unit type. So you'll see other academic and administrative units is the top category. That includes a lot of the units that staff might be part of. It also includes University College. Also visual and performing arts, very strong showing. I heard earlier that some professors had students take it during class, and so it's fantastic. We got a lot of great responses, and so you'll see a lot of their comments later. Arts and sciences, huge part of the university. You'll see that also reflected just in the number of responses. And then the remaining schools are smaller and also have smaller response rates. So the percentages you see here are the percentage of the total, not necessarily the percentage response rate from that, that unit. So just wanted to clarify that. And we asked the question, where do you live? Do you live on campus? Do you live less than 2 miles away, more than 2 miles away? Not very surprising, about half of the students live on campus, and another 40% live within 2 miles. So that really affects commuting patterns. People are walking much more than, say, driving. There's a chance of biking. And for faculty and staff, 75% of them live over 2 miles away. So they're really going to be driving or utilizing different modes of transportation. So within the MyCampus survey, as you'll see in a moment, we give people a chance to place icons on a map and draw walking and driving routes. And so that's what this chart shows. There were over 42,000 icons placed. Just amazing data set, so many comments. And this shows the number of icons placed in the different categories and the color divides between students and faculty staff responses. So as you can see, safety was the highest icon placed, which isn't necessarily unusual for an urban campus that has sort of a permeable edge between the campus and community. But we'll talk about some of those concerns that were voiced in a bit. People also talked a lot about their walking routes and dining, classrooms, where people work and study. So some of the basic sort of university day-to-day functions were what people were really commenting on. For a few of the icons, we give people an opportunity to give a thumbs up or thumbs down. So is that a high quality space, which you see in green, or a low quality space, which you see in blue? The grays are just no one really says. And so as you can see, the takeaway here is that people generally have really positive feelings about the campus, and classrooms would be the exception. You can see this larger piece of bar that's dedicated to thumbs down. All right, so getting into the maps. This is a map that shows the walking routes of freshmen and sophomore students. And just to orient you all, you can see the highway running along the west side of campus, Comstock here connecting main campus with south, downtown including the warehouse, and then Euclid Avenue leading into the east neighborhood. So this was a diagram that really surprised us, just because the freshman experience based on this map seems to be very contained within the core campus. And we'll see some other icons which kind of help to explain why that might be. For juniors, seniors, and graduate students, the campus becomes much more expansive. People are living in the east, so you can see this activity along Euclid. There's more traffic down to South Campus along Comstock, and also just a general street grid movement into the northern campus areas, into this east downtown section. And for faculty and staff, even more intense walking patterns, and we were really surprised by this Comstock movement. Just a lot of people walking, maybe from where they park their cars. So that was just interesting. We also asked about transit and bus routes. We heard, or we've received data that 90% of the shuttle activity is linking South Campus to main campus. And so you can see that reflected here. Some connective corridor activity to the north, but really the intense back and forth is along Comstock. We also gave people a chance to comment. And so we've had the results for about a week and have done an initial overview of the comments, but there are so many that there's definitely a lot more to mine. So I'll be eager to hear your comments on what we should continue to investigate within this data set. So for transit, there were a couple themes that really were strong. One is from faculty, staff, and graduate students, is that when the undergraduate population goes away during breaks and during the summer, the shuttle service changes, and it can be a real challenge for people who still have to commute back and forth from the parking, especially on South Campus. Another theme that was really common is just that at certain times of day, the shuttles are super crowded, and so one or two or maybe even three will pass by before someone can actually board a bus. So people will choose to walk, or they change their commute patterns, or they just feel a general anxiety or frustration about that lack of predictability. And then this is the first VPA comment, that there used to be a shuttle directly from Syracuse Stage to BBB. That route has changed, and so some of those outlying facilities have transportation challenges. All right, this is the biking activity. Pretty light, which isn't necessarily surprising given Syracuse's climate, the lack of current infrastructure, and also just the hilliness. So you can see that the activity here is really concentrated along Comstock, along Euclid with some along Comstock. And that makes sense because Euclid's a relatively even street. So students living in the east neighborhoods are the ones that are the main commuters by bike. Here are driving patterns. So you see Just a lot of activity moving into parking areas along Comstock, people coming in from the highway and from primary streets along the east side of campus. And wouldn't be a survey if we didn't ask about parking, very important topic. So you can see the intense activity near Manley Fieldhouse, some of the parking lots along the west campus and interspersed in the north. Interesting neighborhood parking patterns as well. And so some of the major themes with parking, it would seem to be a combination of the cost of parking along with the need to take a shuttle, which increases commute time. And so just that sort of relationship between the cost and the inconvenience and not understanding why certain lots were discounted more than others. That seemed to be some tension that we were hearing. There was also just the nature of wintertime challenges with all transportation modes in this town. And then this first comment really highlights a sense of ambiguity about procedures, which we were hearing some in our stakeholder interviews along a lot of different theme areas. So this person says, I'm disabled and would benefit from closer handicapped parking. My impression is that if I apply for it, I'll be moved to the far handicapped lot and bussed in, adding more time to my commute. And so this person, rather than understanding what the explicit procedures would be and knowing how to advocate for him or herself, stays where they are because they just don't know how it'll work out and are afraid it will get worse. So that was just interesting and spoke to something we were hearing from a lot of different angles. All right, so this is the housing pattern for freshmen and sophomores. So as you can see, pretty tight, located on campus, Mount Olympus, some freshmen and sophomores in the South Campus area. And for juniors, seniors, and grad students, that pattern becomes much more dispersed, especially moving into the areas north of campus, along the park, Walnut Park? Thorndon Park. Thorndon Park. And then within the East Campus area, a lot of students living there. So a couple comments. One person said that South Campus is the best place to live, even though there's the long commute. So we were hearing that a lot in terms of people wanting to have a single room, wanting more space. So that's one positive for South Campus. One comment from this off-campus area was about how housing on campus is very expensive, so students are looking to the neighborhoods to provide less expensive sources of housing, but that they can't always control the quality of that. And there was a complimentary comment from a staff person who said that they've lived in that neighborhood for years and years and have just watched it really change and kind of destabilize. It used to be a mix of a lot of faculty homeowners, staff homeowners, with a healthy proportion of students. But as people have become more and more a renter population, that quality control has kind of changed. So seeing that reflected in just the idea of housing quality in the neighborhoods near campus. So to zoom in, you can see the residential. This is where we start seeing the thumbs up, thumbs down. So blue is thumbs up, red is thumbs down. For Mount Olympus, people say that it's kind of isolated, it's all by itself, but in a way that really fosters a close-knit sense of community for those people there. Someone living on the west side of campus says that it's a manageable distance from classes, but there's a sense of isolation from other freshmen. And one thing that really surprised us, I mean, we looked at the inventory, we know that other than Ernie Davis, the housing stock is pretty old, and so we were expecting a lot of complaints about just condition and quality, but really, people seemed pretty pleased. And the main thing that kept coming up over and over again were bathroom renovations, and that those are really needed. So that was really interesting and surprising to us. So we'd be interested to hear your comment about that. We're still thinking about residential really closely and trying to understand what's the purpose of residence life, what does Syracuse want residential life to be, does the residential portfolio need to evolve in certain ways? So that'll be a subject of continued discussion. So for classrooms, this overall map really highlights the spread of classroom spaces. Of course, the concentration of classrooms is on main campus and north, kind of extending into the northern neighborhood a bit. You've also got classes at the Syracuse Stage, the warehouse downtown, and also some classes at the field house, and there are a few dots in South Campus as well. And so within the campus core, you can see where the high quality, low quality dots are starting to show up, quite a bit of red. And so here are some of the comments that reflect that. We've heard a lot about Link Hall as just an engineering building that needs an update from kind of multiple perspectives. The same thing for Huntington Hall, just that HVAC issues, temperature control issues, some of those building basics are what's getting in the way of good learning. And then someone from the management school says, we have amazing spaces, recognizing that not all the spaces are equal to that. All right, so this is working and studying icon. So it'll be a mix of where people have labs, offices, where students study. And the comment that I highlighted here, I was really curious about the South Campus area, wondering, are students just studying there a lot? But there are a number of staff, especially, who have offices down here. And this commenter talked about the need to commute back and forth to main campus, and that it's a far distance when they have to do that. And then, whoops, shoot, that was a mistake. Okay, so then you can see in the warehouse some students spending a lot of time working there. I don't know if you noticed under the residential, there was a student in architecture that put their dot on the architecture building, saying that they were there all the time. So we always get some fun comments that way. All right. So zooming in, Bird Library, very popular for working and studying. It helps that the hours are flexible. We've also heard that Bird has become a real social hub, and so some students that really want quiet study time don't necessarily go there to study anymore just because it's become such a hub of other kinds of activity. And so some of them, as you can see in the second comment, have found alternative spaces like the Carnegie Library where it's much more quiet. So we'll be looking at like the presence of study spaces within those traditional study libraries and also within classroom and office buildings just to see how do we get the right mix so that people can have the social study spaces for group work, but also the quiet study spaces that they need. And the art building comment just speaks to the kind of lack of flexible common spaces in a lot of the academic buildings, which we've been hearing a lot about and are starting to tour today and tomorrow and Thursday. So we can't wait to get into the buildings and actually see. But that theme of just a lack of flexible collaboration space, we've been hearing a lot. So this is the dining distribution. You'll see a mix of on-campus spaces. The most intense activity is located on M Street, this intense bubble. Also in the east and downtown. So for downtown, best restaurants in Syracuse, the theater students were very, very vocal about the lack of swipe option near Syracuse stage, and just that puts them in a really awkward position in terms of their meal plan. So definitely wanted to document that. And then when we zoom into the core campus, I mean, there were some complaints about dining, that it's too expensive, that the quality's not good, but it was balanced by people being like, it's great. So I think people are generally happy with the quality of dining services. One thing that we heard a lot at Ernie Davis is that it's just really overcrowded, especially during meal times. So students will come in and just not have any place to sit after they've paid for their meal. That's the main takeaway there. So this is the social pattern. Again, we split it up into freshmen and sophomores, and we'll see how it evolves. So really concentrated on the core of campus. The dots to the north are at Syracuse stage. So really concentrated around the residential, the academic, and traditional student life buildings. And the comments were pretty happy. This, oops, oh no. Oh, this, the food heart that you see. Automatic calendar updates. So the food heart that you see is on M Street. So just that connection between dining out, food, and social life shown there. A positive comment about Shine. Older students tended to be a little more grumpy about the Student Center. And then also another comment from someone on Mount Olympus that just says that because they're sort of isolated, life is really there. You're connecting a lot with the people that you live with. This is the junior-senior graduate student pattern. So not surprisingly, still a lot of activity along M Street, also downtown, there are some dots, and socializing much more in the neighborhoods where people are living. So you can see people like downtown for the bars, and there were some comments about house parties and Greek life activity being a really important social activity for upper-class students especially. That is a direct quote. So here we come to the safety icons. So you can see a pretty dramatic distribution. The most intense dot pattern is on Thorndon Park, also along Comstock. I believe that when the survey was released, there was an incident on Comstock that week, so it was probably fresh on people's minds. Also, a large number of dots on the west side of campus, especially where it's leading to this underpass under I-81. And then a smattering of dots along the west and the south, just pretty interspersed throughout the neighborhoods. So this person said, Thorndon Park is amazing, but everyone knows not to walk there at night. So definitely seeing that a lot with both Thorndon Park and the cemetery to the south, that people really love the spaces, want to use them, but there's a sense of uneasiness, especially if people are traveling alone. With safety, we ask it as a very open-ended question, not necessarily knowing the kinds of responses that people will give. In some campuses, it's all about students being afraid of being hit by cars or some of those traffic concerns, not super present here. But we did see some infrastructure concerns where someone was talking about the stairs next to the stadium that go down toward the law school, and just said that they're often afraid that they're going to slip on them. So that kind of safety appears as well within the icons. Someone made a comment about the western neighborhood, just that they were told not to live west of I-81, so that influenced their decision to live elsewhere. And also this Comstock comment I thought was interesting because it just speaks to the way that planning and infrastructure can really affect safety in multiple ways. So they talk about the lack of sidewalk, the lack of lighting, and also just the feeling of isolation and lack of police presence as they're walking between the cemetery and those low-density residential neighborhoods towards South Campus. All right, so this is a zoomed-in version of what is your favorite outdoor space. As you can see, the quad, the lawn, super concentrated dot pattern, some within the park and cemetery as well. I really like this comment about Hendrix. There were a lot of comments about sitting on the steps of Hendrix or just the connection of Hendrix as a building to the open space of the quad, and I think we'll be looking more and more at that. How do the buildings relate to the open spaces and strengthen them and make them feel vibrant? This comment from ESF, people didn't really talk about ESF much. We didn't release the survey to ESF students, but the Syracuse campus really appreciates having a chance to take advantage of some of the nice quiet spaces that are on that part of campus. And again, Thorndon Park, people love it, but there's a sense of uneasiness for some in using it. And now we'll come to our final diagram, which is where is the heart of campus? And so you can see that the quad is really where the concentration of dots are. Outside of this range, you have some people saying, I'm an athlete, so I'm always at Manley Fieldhouse. I'm a design student, so I'm always at the warehouse, but that number of dots is pretty limited in the overall pattern. Just wanted to acknowledge that there was a distribution. And so in terms of the comments, it seems like the dome and the quad are really the iconic places that people think of as the heart of Syracuse. So the dome, where the heartbeat can be heard, there were comments about loving being part of thousands of people screaming together, and also just the quad, without a doubt. So that comes to the end of our analysis to date. Would love to hear your reactions. Is there anything that was surprising or verified what you already know. Yeah, thank you.
I have a question about the faculty responses. They were low. Now, statistically, they might not be low for a survey, but how are you going to go about eliciting more feedback from faculty? And I'm not a faculty person.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that question. It is true, we tend to expect lower response rates from faculty versus students especially. And so I think throughout this process, there will be multiple ways of engaging, forums like this, work sessions on specific topic areas. We also released a collaboration survey where we had over 300, or just about 300 faculty responses, and so that was really talking about research patterns. So engagement is definitely important, and we'll be looking for multiple ways throughout the process.
So we've met, so we've met with all the deans of all the colleges and of the university. So we've had one-on-one conversations with them to talk about their aspirations and thinking of the future and present conditions, and then met one-on-one with various faculty members depending on the sort of school and need. So reaching out, again, is going to be a process for the next 3 months. There'll be continual collaboration, discussions with each of the faculty. As Maggie said, the collaboration survey, which actually was a recording like this of their desires for collaboration with their peers. And that sort of mapped to those collaboration patterns. We'll be presenting that next time. Okay? There's a bunch of landscape architects over there, so I'm expecting there to be some questions there.
Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming and talking to us. So I have a couple questions about the classrooms and the distinction between them. I saw the big spread between them. Is that captive or registrar ones versus the entire number of learning spaces we have on campus? So there's more than 900 of those. So that's the full breadth of them. And and your distinction between active learning spaces and collaboration spaces, and are you looking into that issue overall?
Yeah, definitely. To answer your first question, it was very open-ended, so I think it would be wherever people are taking scheduled class, so there might even be some labs included in there. In terms of learning spaces, that's something we're definitely going to be looking at. We talked with an architecture and design professor who helped to pilot Think Lab and really think about pedagogical innovations. So yeah, thinking about that in the current buildings and the flexibility of current buildings will be important.
Okay, well, one of the other questions is that my unit actually supports much of the AV in many of those rooms and the technology, so we'd be happy to sort of talk about sort of our strategies in the future and, sort of the resolution we've been looking at and the growth in auditoriums versus, smaller seminar rooms.
That would be great.
All right, so I think on that, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to ask, is there anything that we should know or we should know broadly about the main challenges or
Well, I mean, one of the issues is, of course, we're concerned about the life cycle maintenance of them. There's 168 official registrar rooms, 162 that are generally active all the times, of them a certain number of auditoriums, and we're always cycling through them. But there are a number of other rooms throughout the campus that are used for teaching and learning that aren't on a regular upgrade cycle.
Right.
And therefore, when you see that quality issue, what I'm concerned about is that, there's these rooms that aren't really being addressed in a way that needs to be addressed. And so we'd like to be part of the answer to solving that problem in whatever way that we can.
All right.
So I don't know if that's really what you're asking.
That's perfect.
Okay.
So we are working with the registrar's data on utilization of classrooms as well. So we're actually correlating this anecdotal information with that real-time information. So it is true that we're finding, a lack of quality interaction space beyond the classroom. So that's a common theme we've heard from professors and students alike. The other thing we're looking at is the portfolio, the types of size spaces we have for teaching, and how would that match the pedagogies for the future. So that's a huge component of what we're doing on the academic side.
That's great. And then the other piece is that we do provide, labs that students use, on their own time. And we've been looking at changing them. So we created the maker space, which I don't know if you've seen, and we're looking at a gaming lab. And so any conversations around those would be helpful to us as we think about the future and what we want to build out. So.
Definitely. We'll be in touch. And I just wanted to make a comment based on what Rick said. He mentioned we'll be looking at classroom utilization data as well. And so none of these data sets that we're looking at are meant to be deterministic. We're always kind of cross-referencing and seeing how they inform one another. Sometimes we'll see something really surprising within space data, and we'll look at the MyCampus survey to investigate why is that one particular room used all of the time or not used at all. So the comments are really, really useful to us in that sense. So thanks to everyone.
And obviously, you know, there are different patterns when it's under registrar's control versus not, or departmental control. So we're looking at those utilization patterns as well. And obviously that's going to affect pedagogy, but also enrollment management issues as well.
And there certainly are, I don't mean to hog it up, but there are trends towards active learning. And so what those spaces look like and how they're designed,
Exactly.
and, you know, where you're going to put screens, all those things are issues that you know, we're concerned about in terms of making the learning experience as engaging as possible, as interactive as possible, while including much of the online element that people are doing today with flipped classes or hybrid classes or blended classes. And so really we want to, you know, make sure that as we move forward that those things are, you know, part of the picture.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question about the collaboration survey. The list of, basically there was interdisciplinary programs were not included with a few arbitrary exceptions, which made it very difficult to fill in the survey for those of us who are involved in interdisciplinary programs, and particularly since interdisciplinary programs are some of the most important core areas where we see cross-campus collaboration, and also the fact that the library wasn't originally on the list and was added halfway through the survey. So my question is how, given that this will potentially lead to skewed data, how are you going to address that issue? Is the collaboration survey going to be redone, or are there going to be other ways in which the collaboration that exists around interdisciplinary programs is going to be studied?
Okay, so great comment. Thank you very much. So I think one piece to say is that we've talked with the working group, the committee that is overseeing this process about this survey, and I think that there will be different kinds of follow-up from the departmental level. The response rate wasn't so high that we would consider it deterministic at all. So I don't want you to, we'll be showing it when we talk about the overall academic picture probably in January. And so I don't want you to think that we're saying it's the absolute end all. I think because it's a network diagram, it's always really challenging to come up with the right list of departments. If it's too long and includes every center, a lot of times people say, I'm confused, I can't find what I'm looking for. If it's too short, we're leaving things out. And so we recognize it's a challenge, and we did our best to come up with that initial list based on where individual faculty were housed. But your all's comments really helped us to think about how we can do the survey differently. So when we sort of reiterated and added the libraries, we also created a comment portion, and our analyst found that a lot of the departments listed were very consistent. And so we were able to incorporate those into the survey without making the list terribly long. So it's definitely a challenge for us as outsiders to understand kind of the intricacy of the university's academic system, and we're doing our best in trying to kind of find that happy medium between sort of absolute getting everything and then also creating something that's usable. So
yeah, I mean, I just recommend in terms of in future, like if someone in on the steering committee had taken a look at the list, they would have seen that there was for example, in arts and sciences, there was all the departments and then one or two interdisciplinary programs, which made it seem sort of completely arbitrary. So I think making sure that administrators and faculty sort of have, before the thing goes out, have a set of eyes on it to make sure that you're reading the structures of the university.
Yeah, so the similar questions are raised by your colleagues. So we're investigating how can we add depth to that information, and certainly in certain groups there wasn't enough respondents to actually make any deterministic evaluations. So we're looking to see how we may either reiterate the conversation again or add more depth through conversation. Okay?
Yeah, or use it as a jumping off point and say, how can we explore these questions in different ways, looking at the patterns that we see?
Great, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
There's a question back there.
I won't continue to hog the stage. So one of the other things that we think about is the future. So we're talking about the current state of the university. and the current population of students and faculty that we have on the university. So Generation Z is coming, right? They're moving right along, millenniums are here. And so in terms of the strategy towards the future, is that part of your analysis and sort of the recommendation will take into account the Generation Z that we sing, the mobile, the different interactive styles of them?
I mean, certainly we're going to be looking at, not only the sort of demographic of the future and what they will mean. Obviously, that's a constantly dynamic change and process in the student and the educator himself or herself. So that's definitely a pattern for the future. We're looking at how that may affect enrollment management. So all those things. But obviously, we know one thing from doing a lot of these buildings ourselves, that the future is going to be about more and more flexibility, more and more adaptability to our buildings, whether they be reuse of existing buildings or new buildings coming online. So we know that that's the bigger change coming, and we want to be building or thinking about new flexible spaces versus spaces that are very regimented in their sort of inflexibility.
And what are you using to inform yourself about the Generation Z or the future? I mean, so obviously you can't ask us about Generation Z in some direct sense. So in terms of the resources that you're using to think about those strategies.
But if I can determine the waves of the future, I probably wouldn't be standing here making X dollars a year. I'd probably be some stage talking about the rest of the world. So we do our best to understand, if you look at the past, there's always a read to the future. So we obviously know there is change and flexibility and that we're moving, definitely the world is moving that way. Obviously, pedagogically, the more we can have active work learning spaces for the students, that's a much more collaborative environment for them and faster learning rates. So we're trying to sort of correlate that information and trends of the future and actually understand how do we actually learn better, and then how do you make an environment that actually fits those patterns. So we add as much as we can, but we rely on you guys to actually tell us what you're seeing. Okay? Yes?
On that point about relying on us, how would we, if we have specific concerns, contact you or reach out to you? Because you're saying that this isn't determining anything, it's sort of getting a feel for what's happening. So like being a theater student, I don't have access to dining halls. It's not a thing, and I have to pay for a dining plan, and I don't have access to it.
Right.
So if I had those specific concerns, how would I go about contacting you? If we start a petition or any of that, how would we go about getting that to you guys?
Well, we're definitely always receiving information from the Fast Forward Syracuse website. So Lou's been fantastic about keeping us in the loop on the comments that are coming in through that. And we'll continue to have these forums and workshops around specific issues. So,
right. I'm Jackie Grosso. I'm with Syracuse University and Fast Forward Syracuse Program Management Office. So if anyone in the audience does have questions or concerns or things they'd like to add, please go to the Fast Forward Syracuse website and put in information that we do check the mailbox every day, and we'll make sure that it gets to our friends at Sasaki. So no problem.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
That's kind of like
that. Some of what the survey touches on and that you're looking at is outside the bounds, the physical bounds of the university. So we're getting into the city of Syracuse. So I'm wondering whether you have already begun discussions or what plans you have to work with the city on looking at some of the issues and some of the ideas that come out of this.
So today we began a discussion internally with understanding the current regulatory framework and how we actually work with the city to build the campus and infrastructure for the campus that serves the campus. Obviously, there's a lot of issues around safety, policing. How do we actually look at those safety issues, for example, on the quality of streets at Euclid? So that's obviously a place where the two of us can intersect, we and the city. So I think once we understand so we're still in that problem-seeking mode, what are the issues that are surfacing? And then some of those are going to go into a bucket that have to do with working with the city and outlining new policy or collaborative relationships with them. So we hope to, once we have a number of problems identified, we will probably be working with Lou to set up a meeting with the city regulatory authorities and other authorities to understand, here's the issues we're raising. Are there rubs from your side of the direction that we need to know about as we go towards the future? So it'll be part of the process.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, the campus doesn't exist in isolation. So a lot of partners will be brought on as necessary or as important. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I know personally I use a lot of things at Syracuse, and I know many other students that do. Did you think about, like, have you guys looked into that?
It was an oversight for this portion, but we definitely would love to hear from you all. And we'll figure out the best way to continue to engage. I'm so excited that you all are here today. Is there anything, do you all have any initial comments about kind of your reactions? How would you have answered the survey? What are the places that you use? Do you have some of the same concerns about safety or housing or? Yeah.
I live by Thorndon, so yeah, some of the concerns about Thorndon and also transportation to South Campus.
So you park on South Campus, or?
I don't, I walk, but I know a lot of people that have trouble getting back and forth between the two.
Right.
I mean, it is a good question. We have raised, you know, what are the relationships with SUNY, ESF, and with Upstate? So two of our biggest neighboring constituents. So what is the relationship we have today? Where is it? And what should it be in the future? And where would the collaborations be? See, historically, there was more interfaces between the two entities. And we need to know where are we today and where does it need to go. Obviously, the Hill would be a stronger place if there were three working in concert versus three isolated relationships. So we're going to investigate where is the status of relationships and then to see where that needs to lead to. And that would hopefully, I think, Lou, we would be looking at possible forums, at least touching base with leadership at both institutions.
Hello. Sorry. I know you guys have done a lot of master plans at other campuses. I'm just kind of curious. I know it's a little bit early in the process, but how is this process at Syracuse lining up, and what are the kinds of things that you're seeing on our campus, and how do they compare? And I know every campus is different, but are you seeing any trends early on? Is there anything that's jumping out, things that look good, things that look bad, outside of what you've talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that are being raised, evidenced by the pattern of residential life, the pattern of traffic and safety and walking, commuting times, well, those are all a product of dispersal. So the campus is very wide-reaching in its geography. So that's both a good thing and a bad thing. So if you think about, you know, residential life on the South Campus, that's 1,800 students living there. That's a huge population to be living that far away. Now, it's been there historically. We're going to be positing ideas probably to explore, is there a better way to do that? So what happens if we think about long-term that population migrating northward to the core campus? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? So, but if you could look at some of those patterns that Maggie's been demonstrating from a commuting time, walking time, safety, those are all problems of dispersal. Certainly we've heard long and hard about the warehouse district as a lovely area to work and live in and socialize in. But the other extreme is that a lot of the professors complain about the distance when they have to come back up to the Hill, and that raises parking issues. So, you know, everything is ultimately interrelated, and what Mags and the team will do will be actually overlaying several of these as they come out to see how does traffic patterns influence pedestrian safety, and where those two start intersecting, you know you're going to have pedestrian conflicts, which we'll verify in the field as well as anecdotal information from public safety. So the dispersal issue is a huge issue, and the other thing I think we're seeing is a lot of the building stock, especially residential building stock at SU, was built in the 50s and 60s post-World War II. So that stock is ready for renewal. Lou's been doing a good job keeping up, but that's why we didn't actually hear many negative stories about quality of the housing itself. But the distribution of that housing, does it hurt academic life in the long run? Obviously, we're looking for residential life to be more than just beds. It should be actually enabling better academic performance and better civic performance. So we tend to find that dispersal does set a trend we're seeing nationally, especially with 50s and 60s housing that was built post-World War II.
Yeah, one of the things that always struck me about the campus is that there's not a lot of spaces where the inside sort of flows to the outside, so that you get a sense of being able to leave the building and be in a place that in a space rather than just walking somewhere else or going somewhere else.
Right.
So, and even though I know we have long winters, et cetera, I think there are many universities which have similar kinds of weather patterns and have a better sense of place outside the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if that's something that you're going to be looking at. I think that helps to breed collaboration, a sense of community, and sort of a pleasure of being on the campus.
Yeah, and a way of dealing with this climate, right?
Pardon me?
And a way of dealing with this climatic issue that we have here.
With dealing with?
With the climatic issues that we have, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a very limited time of good weather during the scholar season, how do you actually make those in-between places that are neither classroom or labs, but actually places for interaction?
Yeah.
So in fact, that's been cited by student and faculty alike as being the biggest missing piece of the academic experience.
And how do we make winter enjoyable? Is there a way that we can?
Well, that's not possible in Syracuse. We're not going to get there.
So I think you're saying that that's going to be something you're going to be taking a look at?
Sure.
Yeah.
Trying to build into the plans, into the master plan?
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
mean, as we're looking at space data now, concurrent with this anecdotal data, one of the things we are finding is that there is less a problem with the quantity of space, more with the quality of space. So especially in arts and sciences example, where are those interaction spaces going to occur? When we're dealing with a building framework that is fairly solid masonry buildings with no ability to sort of interact with each other. So that'll be a huge part of the academic exercise. Yes, oh good.
So this is really just to piggyback on to the winter conversation, but since you're going to be looking at neighborhoods surrounding campus and South Campus, one of the issues in Syracuse is there isn't a policy about shoveling your sidewalk in the winter. You guys may or may not know that. So that's something to consider when you're talking about parking and people driving to school. A lot of people would like to walk to school, but it's really difficult in the winter.
We actually heard that at the forum earlier. That,
okay, good.
Yeah, someone was talking about the same thing. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and that's an interesting demographic pattern. 40 years ago when I was in school here, there was a lot more home ownership in the Euclid Ave, Ackerman neighborhoods. So that led to people shoveling their own sidewalks in front of their houses. As that demographic has shifted, there goes the lack of responsibility with that sort of policing of your own turf in front of your house. So that's the issue of the shifting demographic in the neighborhoods, even though it's outside the campus, is actually part of the realm that we'll be thinking about. Other questions? Okay. Oh, yes, sir.
A request, actually. My name is Ralph Zito, and I'm chair of the Department of Drama and also sit on the Strategic Plan Steering Committee. I'd like to make a request that on a go-forward basis, the building at 820 East Genesee Street not be referred to as Syracuse Stage, and I partner with the people at Syracuse Stage to work on this issue. I'd love for it to be referred to either as the Regent Theater Complex or the Stage Drama Complex. Stage is an entity with whom the Department of Drama partners very successfully for the mutual benefit of both sides. It's not a building, and it's a big identity issue for me and for my students. So particularly in external communication, that would be really helpful to me in that. Or if anybody above the steering committee level, Dr. Markosha, has anything that we, as a concern about that, we can talk about it. But there.
Thank you.
Get to the point where I start repeating myself, and that's not so good.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. That's a good clarification.
Anything else? Okay, thank you so much. Tico, ma'am.
Hi, with the latest news we've read about the move to go to a non-smoking campus, how does that fit into your plan for the future? I didn't see any survey results on, where people tend to smoke and how far they'd be willing to go off campus to smoke, and whether there will be some accommodations for those people.
That's the first time I've heard about it, so we'll put it on the hopper for consideration. Anything else? Thank you so much for your time. So we'll be back monthly, and we'll have probably forums around each monthly visit. Okay? So for the next, just so you know, the next 3 months will be intense, continued data gathering around these issues, more interviews, touching base, building walkthroughs to correlate with this data, and then real data with the registrar. So thank you so much for your time and comments. Thank you very much.